Welcome to Fitness and Consciousness. My guest today is Erin Wigger. She's an old friend of mine, and she is a gymnastics coach and a beekeeper. So she is here today. I'm actually at her place to talk about bees and what's the big deal about bees. So thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Ryan. Well, if there's no bees, there's no us. So basically, that's what I try to do is promote and spread the word through beekeeping towards... I've talked to close to about 1,000 kids and adults last year. And actually, you're the first kicking this spring off. So, woohoo!
Nice.
Yeah. So, I'm not a professional beekeeper. I am a beginner. My father has been doing it since the 70s, so I've always been around it. He's always had a hive. The first swarm he got was gathered with a paper box and a garbage bag for a suit, and his friend pushing him and saying, "Go get him." So that's how he started. And I do this because my father has worked so hard, so I am doing this kind of like his legacy is to at least inform people, because they don't know that if you see a swarm that it won't hurt you. They don't know that if it wasn't for bees, we would have no fruit, nuts, berries, vegetables, grass. So, I mean, how would the cows get fed? So it just all kind of snowballs. So I talk about what is in the hive, what we get out of it, what hurts the bees, what we can do to save them. And that's kind of about how I go about it.
So when you're getting this like from your dad, I remember like from high school that he was a trapper, and I don't know a lot about him, but it sounds like he was into a lot of this natural ways and kind of.
Yeah, he's definitely. He is a forest. He went to school for forestry, and he was a trapper, fisherman. Taught me about all that good stuff, but has always had a passion for honeybees and is what I would call the Yoda of the bee world. It seems like every time I ask him a question, it leads into 10 other questions. There's just so much to know about honeybees. They are the most studied insect. They're the only insect that we get food from. There's no other insect that provides us food. So I guess what I can start off with is just the basics of a hive. You have a stand that the hive goes on. You have a bottom board. You have brood boxes, which are where they laid eggs and keep honey and pollen for their babies that they're raising. Then you have usually a queen extractor, and that keeps the queen from going up into your super boxes, which are where the surplus of honey is. On top of that, you have a inner cover that protects from rain and the elements and protects moisture and this and that. And then you have the top cover or lid, which protects from the elements. We use usually the same kind of hive. It's just easy to, there's a bunch of different fancy hives. People have them in their living room. People have the ones that have honey come out already and makes it look easy, like a dispenser. Those hives don't work in Indiana. Like, so if you see those hives that you can just turn the faucet and honey comes out, those people are not living in Wisconsin or Indiana. So we try to use the basic original hives. They have a name. I've been told a million times, of course, right now. I'm slipping my mind. But and we also keep the hive up off the ground to protect it from water, skunks, bears, whatever oh good Lord, honey badgers, not that there's honey badgers running around. And then it also protects it against hive beetle and other parasites that can get in there, because everything loves honey. Everything loves honeybees. Like, everything's always trying to steal the wax, steal the honey, or eat the bees. So, I mean, can't blame them. Stuff's delicious. So, your average, box that you would buy for starting, if you ever wanted to start a beehive, they run around $300 for just a simple setup. It's not cheap. And sometimes you can find equipment, but you also have to be careful, because what if one of the hives had foul brood in it and someone didn't tell you about it, or you have frames that have wax moths? You got to be really careful about buying used equipment when you do all that. And that price on that hive, that doesn't include the honeybees, which are, that could be $90 for a swarm of bees. And sometimes you need a new queen. That could cost $24 just for a queen plus shipping. So there's people that raise, queens, which is a whole other can of worms. And that's my goal this year, is to learn about queen rearing and all that good stuff. But a lot of people ask, like, who's in the hive, and what are all the bees doing? A lot of people think that when you see a honeybee out on a flower, that's a boy or a girl. Any bee that you see working anywhere on a flower or in the trees is a worker bee that is a female. A drone has giant eyes, a small mouth, and cannot feed itself. They have to be fed by the nurse bees. So basically, the way the body of the hive works is you have the little eggs that hatch, come out. Those are your brand new bees. They do jobs around the frame, like cleaning, feeding the other young bees. So they're getting kind of familiar with the hive. And then as they get more familiar, they'll do other things, My dad calls the bees mortician bees, which I think is hilarious. They'll drag dead bees out. You'll have guards, which the guards are the ones that, if you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing around the hive, they're the ones that are going to bother you. I found that the hard way last year when I was taking photos like an idiot in a bright pink shirt on a windy day, and one of those guards got me and chased me and my son all the way to the car. So that was fun. Then once they get comfortable, then they'll go out and forage. So the ones that you see foraging are the bees that are older. Right now, a lot of people, the dandelions will start popping out, and you'll see tulips and this and that. If you don't see bees on the flowers, it doesn't necessarily mean that bees aren't out, but you should look up, because right now they're working on the maple trees and other budding trees, or collecting resins for propolis, or people call it propolis, which is a resin or like a bee glue that they use to seal up holes in the hive. So that's the worker. They're all female. They do the jobs of everything. So the drone has the big eyes, and it's the male. He cannot sting you. He can go from hive to hive, whereas worker bees very rarely can go from hive to hive. They usually stay within their colony unless, like, something happens. Then sometimes they can go to another hive and be accepted. But the drones lay around, they get fed. Their one sole purpose is to mate with the queen. They might mate with the queen. More than likely, they won't be able to ever mate with her. Once they actually mate with the queen, this is so horrible, his abdomen pretty much erupts and busts and connects with hers. It's pretty nasty death, but he dies after that. So, sorry, drones. After, like in the fall with the drones, the worker bees can lay only drone cells or drone eggs. So if we ever go and check on our hives and pop the lid and we see a bunch of drone cells, we know that there's something wrong or the queen is failing. The drone cells, those are worker bees. I'm showing Ryan a picture. The queen, when the queens lay eggs, the cells are flat. And then when the workers lay drone eggs, or the queen can also lay drones, the drone cells are rounded. So if we open up and see a bunch of rounded cells all over the place, we have problems. So, and I won't get into all of that right now. It's a headache in itself. But the drones can go from hive to hive. In the fall, the workers, since they don't need the drones in the fall because they all gather in a ball to stay warm around the queen, and they just kind of move to where the honey is in the hive, the workers will chew the drones' wings off or chase them out into the cold where they die of starvation. So they get rid of all the drones in the fall, so it's just the workers and the queen in there. And then in the spring, early spring, they'll start laying eggs again. And like I said, the worker can lay a drone, and a queen, which I think this is super cool, can lay a drone, a worker, or another queen, just like that.
Whatever she wants at the time.
Whatever she needs, which is crazy, isn't that? Can you imagine the world like that? Wow. I don't know. I don't even want to think about it. But, yeah. So the queen, she she lays thousands of eggs day after day. She's continuously surrounded by the worker bees and fed and cleaned and kept an eye on. And if she feels like she's failing, if she's older, if she can sense that there's something wrong, she'll start laying queen cells. And then her and half the hive will take off, and that's your swarm. So when you see a swarm out, they're very docile. You don't want to spray them. They're not going to hurt you. They will eventually leave and go find a suitable place unless they take up residence to wherever they are and wherever they landed. I have friends who have pest control places, but they're beekeepers too. And multiple times last year, they went to go pick up a swarm and someone sprayed them, which is a no-no. You don't have to spray them. They're not going to hurt you. They're not saying that you want to go up and like start playing with them and messing with them, but there's a queen inside that ball of bees, so they're more interested in protecting her and making sure she's safe. So the best thing to do if you do find a swarm and you don't know what to do, you can get online and go to social media and post a picture of the swarm and just start asking around because somebody knows a beekeeper. And then you also have to be careful of who you actually have come out and get the swarm. Some beekeepers would be more than happy to take them for free, but more than likely you'll get charged. And I mean, that's not a bad thing. It's their time. They have to take care of the bees. They put them in a hive, which we all know is expensive. And it's definitely worth the charge, but just be careful. Find out what charges are before you have someone come out and deal with the swarm. So basically your hive, you got workers that are girls, drones that are boys, and you have the queen who is the heart of the colony. If she dies or if anything happens to her, the colony will fail. So when she swarms and leaves all those queen cells, which they're kind of cool looking, they're maybe about as long as your pinky finger up to your knuckle. They put royal jelly in the cell, and then the queen lays the queen egg, and that royal jelly helps the queen develop into a queen bee. So if there's like 3 or 4 queen cells in the hive, the first one that hatches can make a peep noise, like peep, peep, or piping noise. And the queen, the first one to come out, will come out, and she's got a special stinger. It can't hurt you, but it kills the other queen. She'll go and use that stinger and kill all the other queen bees, because you don't want a bunch of queens together because they'll fight. So, it's like having two queens together. You're going to have hair pollen and, they're going to damage each other. So if both of them get damaged, then the colony will fail. So it's pretty amazing how that all works itself out with the queen stinger. And what a cool bug, So...
yeah, it's fascinating how complicated it all is, but they all have their job, they know what to do, and...
Absolutely. And they communicate so well. There's so many communications they do, and I'm sure people have heard about their dances that they do, and they can tell food sources, they can talk to each other, and it's just amazing. Other things, we know who's in the hive, but why are bees so important? What do we get from honeybees? Pollination's number one. 1 out of 3 bites of food is because of the honeybee. And I always talk about honeybees pollinating, but it's also important to protect all pollinators, your bats, your butterflies, lots of birds. Like, I feel like they kind of get put in the back burner when people talk about bees. So when I'm lecturing kids, I don't just talk about, the benefits of honeybees, but a lot of pollinators. Bats are big pollinators.
I didn't know that. Or birds. I guess I didn't know that either.
Anything that, sucks something, pollen from one thing to another. Absolutely. But pollination, if you like carrots, coffee, apples, figs, vanilla, eggplants, pumpkins, kidney beans, cucumbers, oranges, berries, strawberries, broccoli, buckwheat, palm oil, quinces. I could go on all day about the hundreds of foods that would not be here if it weren't for honeybees. It almost makes me want to cry sometimes. Sometimes I gotta slap myself in the face when I'm talking to these kids because I'm like, oh my God, it's horrible. We gotta help.
So is it true that there is declining populations, and why are they declining?
Absolutely, it is a fact. When you look at the statistics, hive loss is millions of hives over the years. Like, I've got it written in the depths of my notes, but millions, thousands of hives perish every year, and then, the hurricanes down south, when was the one in Florida? You got beekeepers in Tupelo groves that, oh gosh, I just couldn't even imagine the hives that are lost down south, when the bad storms come in. But it's not only storms, it's our chemicals. Chemical. I hate to say it, and I don't want to sound like too hippie when I talk about it, but bees need clean water. If they have unhealthy water, they bring it back to the hive because they need it. They use it to decrystallize their own honey. And they extract multiple different minerals and things from it. Everything that lives needs clean water. So there's your problem. When you spray that Roundup, one of my favorite chemicals, I'm joking. When you spray that stuff or treat your lawns, you have to use it carefully. It doesn't just go away. That stuff takes... some of it doesn't even break down. So when you spray it and it rains, where do you think that goes? It goes into your rivers, goes into your wells. You just have to be careful. So I always say, if you want to treat your lawn, I'm not going to judge you. Who doesn't love a, field of green grass for your kids to play in? I get it. But you have to be careful. There's ways to be respectful. Put it on before the flower or after the flower. If you put those chemicals on during the flower, the bee will drink the nectar and it can kill them. And the same thing with like mosquito foggers. Oh my gosh. Don't get me started on these guys. That stuff, take it upon yourself to put your chemicals on and then go shower after you're done playing outside. Drift is a real thing, and it's a real problem. I have a good friend who's lived in a house for 25 years. The neighbor, she wanted also a beehive. The neighbor next door, pregnant, scared of Zika, I can't blame her, started fogging the property. So she can't have a hive now, even though she's lived there for 25 years. Beautiful property. Neighbor fogging. It sprays down. If they're playing outside, if they're grilling, they got to go in. And it doesn't kill the bug instantly. And don't think it just kills mosquitoes. It gets everything. Because what happens is you fog that stuff. It lands. Then the bugs ingest it in the dew or the liquids in the water. And then that's when they die. So stuff like that is all, just environmental ways. Reduce your carbon footprint. All these things have a role to play and it's not just honeybees, it's everything, the coral reefs, all of it is starting to show how we take care of our planet. And the bees are just, the ones that are a good sign right off the bat. We don't see the coral reefs. We don't live near them, but boy, do I see some, hives that when a whole hive disappears for no reason from the colony collapse disorder, what is going on? And it's just, ugh. So, other reason bees are important, not only because of pollination, they make honey, yay! And there's so many benefits to honey, and you don't want processed honey. It's been heated, so a majority of the good things in it are burnt out and kind of zapped. You want raw honey from someone who you know. You want to know what's in your bottle, because not all honeys have honey in them, or they have like a honey-like product, There's some good shows on, I hate to name drop places, but like, Netflix, there's what is that called? Raw, maybe, is it? In the first one.
It's a documentary?
It's a documentary. I think that's what it's called. The first episode's about honey and what China has done to the flood of honey. And it's amazing. Check that out.
And so how, because you should get honey from as close to where you live as possible.
Yeah.
Is that, why is that?
If you want the health benefits for like allergies, they say do get it in your area. It's kind of like, I guess, taking a vaccination. You don't want to get the flu, so you get the flu shot and put a little bit of old flu in it, so you build up an immunity. Honey is the same way. So it has pollen in it, and nectar from your trees. So when you ingest it, it gets into your system and it helps you build up immunity. So when you're breathing it in, supposedly it helps. And I also have people who take it and it helps them sleep. I've never heard that one, but she swears by it every night. She has some honey, and I believe her kids do too, and it helps them get a good night's sleep. It soothes sore throats. I swear by this. It's like the best if you just are coughing and hacking. It strengthens your immune system. It has antifungal, antibacteria. It fights tooth decay. Calms your nervous system. It balances blood sugars.
How does it fight tooth decay? That seems like
absolutely crazy. I know, but it's not necessarily sugar. It's nectar and pollen. So, so here's how honey works. A bee goes and flies and gathers pollen, right? And they use that to help raise babies. So it's called bee bread. They'll take a little bit of honey and a little bit of pollen and ram their head into these cells and then lay an egg in there, and that's what the little baby eats, okay? So traces of pollen end up in honey. They don't purposely like put it in it. What you're actually eating is nectar. So they'll go, drink up the nectar. It goes into a honey stomach, which mixes with enzymes, and they regurgitate it back up into a cell. And then what they do, and it has to be hot in order for the honey to really treat and evaporate well, they'll fan it. So if you see a bunch of bees, during winter months, taking their wings, and they're fanning and trying to help evaporate the nectar, which turns into the sticky substance. How does it fight tooth decay? I have no clue. Good question. Dad, if you're listening, I can't wait for him to listen to this too and be like, no, that's not right. That's not right. What are you talking about? Yeah. Remember, I am not a professional. I am just sharing with you what I have learned within the past 5 years of attempting to beekeep with my dad and having 2 children on top of it all.
But, yeah, you do obviously say like amateur like compared to your dad, but I mean compared to most people, I didn't know a lot of this stuff. So I think most people are going to be learning quite a bit from this, and if you're not sure of like something like calling your dad like Yoda because he's been doing it for longer than you've been alive, then it just shows that like how much there is to learn about it. It's not
easy, and it's overwhelming for sure.
Yeah, she has we're at her kitchen table, and she has like graphs, and there's like all kind of like posters and vials and jars of different stuff to remind her of all these different things, and this big notebook full of stuff. One thing I was wanted to ask about was, so like I'm a vegan. I don't use like any animal products. I don't wear leather if I can help it, and I can, which you usually can. But like one exception, I think, is honey.
Because it's totally not vegan. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, but it seems like there's no harm in getting honey. It only helps, right?
I mean, as a beekeeper, and I know when the Bee movie came out, my dad did not like that movie at all. There's just, as a beekeeper, and you watch that movie, there's so many bad things. Like the bees that come in with the pollen, the honey jockeys, they're dudes. Boys don't bring in honey. Those are the workers. And then it makes the beekeepers look like big, stupid, butt crack showing people that go in and steal the honey. If it weren't for beekeepers, a lot of hives probably wouldn't exist nowadays. You have foul brood, which is a disease. You have mites that are a disease, or mites that go in and weaken them. You have hive beetle, which is absolutely horrible if you have a hive infested with those. I mean, these do super damage to the honeybees. So, and this it always is good conversation amongst beekeepers. Do you vaccinate? Do you give them medication? Do you go all natural? It's fine to go all natural, but that's not necessarily something that we want to do. We work really hard on our bees to keep them healthy and safe. The idea of just kind of letting them run their course without treating them for dysentery, without putting medicines in to help them take care of the hive beetle, we kind of find it as like if we didn't vaccinate our own kids. My son has a fever. Well, I'm not going to give him medicine. I'm just going to go the natural route. Sometimes we think it's just, why wouldn't you? It doesn't harm them. It doesn't end up in the food supply. You don't treat them when there's honey supers on, so we believe in medication. Is it bad that other beekeepers don't? No, we don't judge. We don't think poorly of them. If it works for them, that's great. However, if I ever do buy, or my dad would buy, hives from other beekeepers, you better guarantee those will be on quarantine for, a couple weeks until you figure out that they're not going to spread disease or parasites to other hives.
Does it depend on the area? Like, some people might be able to do it naturally because they live here, but because you live over there, you just can't do it? Does it have anything to do with that? Or?
I don't think so, because if bees, it seems like in the winter, bees get cooped up. When you're cooped up in a house for so long, you start to get sick. It's not healthy. The dust mites and all that stuff affect us in a house. Bees are the same way. They'll get dysentery, and you can see like the little duty splatters on the outside of the hive from being sick, So, things like that. And then...
That's not what you want.
No, and hive beetles fly. So just because you have a hive downtown, don't think my hive, a hive around can't hitch a ride on a truck or whatever. And I've also read that hive beetles love cantaloupe. If you ever see a black, tiny, round, smooth beetle around rotten cantaloupes outside, if you have a garden, those are hive beetles, more than likely. And they're nasty little suckers because the bees can't grab them. They're like smooth and they can't grab them, so they just chase them.
Well,
yeah.
That's now. Do people that have hives? I think I remember seeing something. She showing me a picture of a hive beetle, or not a picture, a real one, in a little vial.
Nasty,
pretty wild,
rotten little suckers.
Do you take the bees to say a farmer wants his field pollinated, and I think I saw something like where they'll hire like the beekeeper to come in and pollinate the field and then take his bees home with him. Like, does that happen? And how does that work? We
don't personally do it, but it happens all over the country. Like your almond groves out in California, they drive, or tons of beekeepers go out there for payday and help those almond groves out there. It's amazing. I think that might be on those documentaries too.
Where did you say they do that?
Out in California with the almond trees. If you eat an almond, that's because of those beekeepers taking their bees out there to pollinate all that.
Why aren't there bees in California to do it without having to hire somebody? Is it because it's not like...
I'm not 100% sure, and don't quote me on any of this stuff, and be gentle when you tell me any comments after this show is all done. I think the demand for the almonds and all of it, there's just such a demand for it. You got your almond juice. They use it in everything, So I think that it's just almost like the demand for it.
It's not just like an environmental thing because California has pollution or something like that.
It might be too. I don't know. California scares me. Don't get me started on that. That's another podcast. It's like mudslides, fires, Jiminy Christmas, poor California.
Yeah, we got a lot going on out there.
I don't know. If anybody knows anything out in California about pollination and almonds, get a hold of us.
Yeah, it is pretty fascinating. So, on the way here, I was listening to a book on CD, The Jungle Book, and I listened to it, and then I'm listening through it through my second time, and it, like, one of the laws of the jungle is that, like, when you go to approach the hive, you have to, like, to get the honey, you have to, like, say sweet things or approach it sweetly or something like that to, because that's just, like, the law of the jungle. Like, if you don't do that, then you're like, asking for trouble. So, is there, like, some kind of, like, ritual? I mean, I know you, like, put on the bee suit, but is there, like, something that you do that's, like, how you approach the bees to...
Absolutely. As of just, like, anything in nature or just with people, you should approach it with respect, for sure. We do suit up. We get our smoker really packed full. If you're going to be doing a lot of work, have a double one. I've heard don't eat bananas when you work on bees, which my dad's like, that's nonsense, because he'll eat Cheerios and sliced banana and then go work on the bees. But the bees, I swear they know my father. We could be anywhere and bees will find him. I think he just like reeks of honey and beeswax. It must come out of his pores. But you just have to be gentle. They can sense fear for sure. So you have to be calm. And if you're scared, and I've been in a few situations where I've been scared. And I'm like, Dad, what do you do? And then he came at me with the most, I kind of had a duh moment, Erin. And he was like, if they get out of control and things get crazy, close your hive up and just call it a day. And I'm like, duh. Because sometimes you got a job and you need to do some things, but it's like they can get mad, you know? I mean, who wants anyone coming into their house and it'd be like ripping the roof off, pulling a couch out? I mean, you're going to get a little frazzled. But for the most part, you know, in the spring and early summer, they're very nice and easy to work with. It's in the summer when the pollen and nectar slow down, and when it gets hot, they get mad. And you never really want to stand in the front of the hive. If you ever see a beekeeper, they'll always be behind the hive working on them because they're working as you're going. And this is crazy because this kept happening last year. We kept standing at the entrance of a hive and I was like, where are all the bees at? And then I turned around and there's about like thousands of bees. And Dad goes, move over. And I moved out of the way, and they're all, whoom, they just like waited for us to get out of the way. I mean,
wow.
It was just crazy stuff like that. So, yeah, we use like feathers. You can use like brushes to kind of gently dust them out of the way. My dad's a big fan of like a feather because it's very gentle. I mean, you can use brushes, but.
Where did he get the feather?
God only knows.
Is it something that
roadkill? Just joking, Dad. Oh my gosh.
I didn't know if he had like some sacred feather passed down from.
No, nah. It probably has been around for a hot minute, but yeah, you can use anything. But yeah, and other than honey, it's like what else comes out of the hive too that we use? We use pollen. I don't know if you knew this. Pollen has everything that you need it to sustain life. So if anything were to happen, I guess go break into a health food store and get a jar of pollen because you might be able to live for a couple weeks longer than everybody else. Dad told me that one last year. Thought that was pretty cool. It prevents acne. Helps with your hair. It contains, I already said that, remedies for allergies. Not everybody wants to eat honey. If you're doing it for the allergies, you're supposed to eat like a couple tablespoons every day. Not everybody wants to do that. But people take pollen, they'll eat it. I'm not a big fan of it. I mean, maybe I could be if I ate it enough, but, you know.
It's kind of like more bitter.
It's like, it's a little funky, but people can put it in like clear pills and just take it that way, you know. I'd be down for that. And pollen is 40% protein, so it's got a lot of protein in it. It's really good for you. It has antibiotic properties to prevent colds and flu. Did I just hear the statistic of pollen buying go up?
Probably would. It makes me want to get some.
I know. It makes me want to now, too.
Yeah.
Next flu season. Beeswax. Beeswax is a big one. It's in all our body products, lip balm, soaps. There's like, literally, if you Google uses for beeswax, there's like 100, you know, waterproofing, unstick zippers. It helps with diarrhea and hiccups, supposedly. I don't know. I've never had to do that with, Imodium. And deep breathing. I don't know. I guess I chew on a chunk of beeswax, see if I'm... perfumes. It's in beverages and candies, crayons, bullets. egg painting, like Ukrainian Easter eggs. That's how they use that. It helps with itch relief, snow skis, archery. I mean, just tons of stuff. So, and then another thing that we get out of the hive is royal jelly. You know how the queen is raised and made into the queen. Royal jelly is really good for your skin. Well, you probably see like Burt's Bees stuff and nice $25 little container of royal jelly. I don't know what else they add to it, if they even do. I was talking to my dad about this because we'll go in, and when you prevent the swarms or the hives from swarming, he'll go in and we'll smush some of the extra queen cells. And like when you smush them, you see that royal jelly just, and I was like, can we start scooping that up, please? You know, it's like good for your skin. It helps with circulation.
You just put it on your skin, or you?
Yeah, you can eat it. You can put it on your skin. Supposedly it helps with liver functions. I don't know. If you guys partied too much on St. Patrick's Day, squirt some royal jelly maybe afterwards. And it's got how it helps with Alzheimer's disease, contains probiotics, all sorts of stuff. Check it out. Propolis, the bee glue that they use to seal the cracks and stuff, it's made out of, I think Dad said like 300 different types of ingredients, and scientists have still not figured out what all's in it. But like the sap from pine trees, and they gather all this different stuff to make propolis or propolis. And then, of course, bees have a medical use with... I've read this thing where they discovered that bee venom can kill the HIV virus without harming the body, which I'm not
That's pretty
sure.
wild.
Yeah, research it, get back to us on that. But then people also do the bee sting therapy for arthritis. Oh, I got stung by a bee last year on accident, like I said, with the pink shirt, and right in my shoulder. And I did feel like $1 million after that. And I've been scared about getting stung because I haven't gotten stung since I was 10.
He was just trying to help you.
Oh yeah, he was like, dumb girl, you got to get going. But it made me feel like, yeah, you know. And then,
interesting.
Until like 24 hours later, I accidentally rubbed it and it started itching. Like, whoa. So.
Can they just sting you once? Do they lose their stinger?
I read the other day that a bee can possibly sting you without dying, but they do. What happens is they sting you, and when they go to fly off, it just literally rips the abdomen off.
Oh, okay.
So they die. Yeah. So, and then you gotta get the stinger out because it'll keep pumping the venom in, and you just, I mean, when you do this, you're eventually gonna get stung if you're a beekeeper. There's just no way around it. Things happen. Kind of like we were taking off honey last year, and my dad's using the smoker, and I'm like, and all these bees are flying out. And I was like, Dad, did you mean to leave your window down in your truck? And we look, and there's bees all in his truck. I mean, things like that. It's inevitable something's going to happen. But he did teach me, too, if you just go in and turn the truck on, they do not like air conditioning. So it's like any kind of cold, they're like...
He knows all the tricks.
I know. And he's learned it the hard way. I don't know how many times I'm like, well, why don't you do that? And he's like, just trust me. Well, did you do that? Yes. So...
Now, what's the difference? Because I've been attacked by a swarm of Yellowjackets 3 times. It's quite unpleasant. And but Yellowjackets, they can sting you over and over again. But do they pollinate, or do they have any kind of function like that?
Well, I asked my dad, I was like, does Yellowjacket or sweat bees, I go, do they have any purpose? And he's like, to be annoying. I'm sure they have some sort of purpose out there in the food chain, either to feed praying mantises or toads or I know the carpenter bees that you see that bore the holes into the wood that drives us all nuts. They're pollinators. They do, they're good. And the one that you see flying around, I believe, is the male, from what my friend Jim said. And then the female is, and this is all from my friend Jim Frazier, shout out. The female is back up in there, and she's got the teeth, and she bores, and she's laying eggs back in that hole. So the female is up in there, you never really see her, and she stings. And then the boy's the one that's flying around that scares you to death because he's giant, but I believe he doesn't have a stinger. So he's a pollinator. That's the one thing, too. It's like going to these schools, kids don't know the difference between a Yellowjacket or like the German wasp. Those are the things that fly around trash cans, bother you at restaurants. They don't know the difference between those and honeybees, and I find that incredibly sad. Sometimes they think cicadas are bees. So a lot of times when I go and do these lectures, I'll bring all sorts of stuff that is not a honeybee. So I'm putting in front of Ryan like a cicada and a cicada killer, and those things are gnarly. Check out the stinger on that thing. Supposedly those don't sting, but that is a gnarly stinger if you ever see one of those. And then the Yellowjackets are bright yellow. They bite and sting and can sting you multiple times. They live in the ground. Sometimes I guess they might go up into your housing. But I don't know how many times. And that's like the one thing when I talk to the kids, I'm like, if you see something flying around a trash can, don't you dare call it a honeybee, because it's not. Sometimes honeybees will come to your table. They won't bother you. They're probably trying to get a drink, or they smell something sweet. They're junkies for sweet things. But more than likely, it's not a honeybee. And Yellowjackets aren't very fuzzy. Like if you see that guy, his thorax or his neck, it's not fuzzy at all. Whereas when you look at a honeybee, and that's a drone. Look at his giant eyeballs and his big booty. So cute. I love drones. They're cute little guys. And those are workers. See the difference?
Yeah, the honeybee, or the one, this one's bigger.
Yeah, the drone.
The drone is bigger than the workers.
He's big and fat, and then the workers are pointy, and you can see their sharp little booty containing the nice little stinger. And then your Yellowjackets, they're bright yellow. Their stripes are more close together, and their wings aren't. I don't think their wings are even as big and full as a honeybee's. And they're just. I've seen people post like, "Oh, look at this sweet little Yellowjacket." I don't think they're sweet when they're going in and trying to rob honey and take stuff. And I've seen bees. It's hysterical. It's like, what are those bees doing? The next thing you know, you see like two bees pulling out a Yellowjacket because they'll go in and try to rob. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of them. But there's, paper wasps, hornets. A lot of people think that the hives up in the trees that are gray, those are not bees at all. Like, I almost feel like even in the Winnie the Pooh books, they show like a hornet's nest type shape. Kids think that is what honeybees, beehives are. That's a hornet's nest, Honeybees, they do their wax with their cells, and it just drapes down in between sticks and leaves. So it's pretty exposed. So if you ever see that up in a tree, chances are that it's probably not going to pull through the winter. A lot of bees will go in trees and do their hives in the trees, which they look pretty darn successful. Especially when you see someone chop a tree down, there's like comb honey, and tons of bees all the way down it. So, yeah, that's my take on things that are not bees. I find it pretty sad that. Do you ever remember seeing a bumblebee, or a bumblebee? Have you ever seen a bumblebee?
Yeah, I think I've been stung by one of those too.
Me too. In the knee years ago, and I probably was like 12 or 14. That was the last time I saw a bumblebee.
The big fat ones were
Big fat ones. They
Yeah.
look so cool. They're on the endangered list. I haven't seen them in years. And they actually make honey, too. Bumblebee honey. It's very, I would say, extremely rare. It's not something you find or even hear about. So...
So when the Yellowjackets or whatever are breaking into the hive, they're just looking for food, or are they trying to?
Everything tries to steal from the bees. The bees are working. You get hornets will get in there and they'll just annihilate a hive. Like they'll eat the bees, they'll eat the young ones. They're nasty when it comes to the destruction that they do. I'm sure they serve some sort of non-annoying purpose, but let me know out there if you know any of it. Yeah, pretty much. It's like, what are you gonna do to help honeybees? What's it all come back to? And that is, watch your carbon footprint, watch your chemicals that you buy. The whole, what is it,
Monsanto?
Thank you. Good Lord. I can read it, but I can't say it. They're a gnarly company that put a lot of things out there. I know if I have one more person tag me to the Cheerios and the free seed thing, it's, in theory, it's wonderful, but they're also part of the problem. Because they use GMO plants and from these companies, and
I'm not familiar with what you're talking about.
There is a really good show, and it came out forever ago. And I don't know how much of it is true, but when I watched it, my jaw dropped. And it was GMO OMG, is what it's called, and it's on Netflix, or it was. Research that movie and watch it, because it's normal people like you and I wondering what is in our food. What am I feeding to my kids? You see non-GMO, but what does that mean? And last year I started just researching and getting ready for bee season and working with Dad, and I just kept uncovering like all these things about GMOs and learning about how farmers have been kind of backed into a corner when it comes to their seeds and how they do things. And, people always think of the bad farmer. Well, the farmer's not bad. They're just trying to make a living for their family. Back in the day, and I believe this is from the show, it said something like a bag of seed was $75. Then you planted it, and then you could take your seed and save it for the next year. Now the seed's up to $300 a bag, and they plant it, and it has all this chemical on it to protect from all these insects and plants that are invasive. But at the end of the year, the farmer can't keep the seed. They have to give it back to the company, which is kind of crazy, and thinking that...
Because it's a patent thing or something.
It is. How can you own a seed? And that's the whole big thing, too. And it's like, do you remember back in the day when we ran through cornfields or played in them in the clearings, Nowadays, supposedly, you shouldn't even be running in it because the corn gives off that chemical.
Well, that doesn't surprise me, I guess.
No. And, I don't know. It just seems like it snuck in there through the 80s and 90s. No one told us that, the seeds had, this chemical on it, like a Roundup on it to protect it. I mean, in theory, it's kind of a cool idea to, play with these plants and kind of keep them from, getting destroyed by these bugs and, having them choked out by weeds. But at the same time, it's like, that's going to have some sort of backlash. And why is it that non-GMO foods have to be labeled, but it should be the other way around? You know? What if you, on your box, had, this box contains chemical, you know? And everything else, why do the people that are doing the good, why do they have to go through all the labeling and go through all the hard times? It should be the companies that have all the millions of dollars from using all this stuff. I don't know. It's a big mess, and it's one that when you talk about beekeeping and all this, I try to tread lightly at, because I don't ever want to offend anyone, because I have good friends that are farmers, and I respect them and what they do. But, you know, it's sad when you go into a school and you look at 50 kids and you say, raise your hand if you know what organic is, and 3 kids raise their hand. Raise your hand if you know what a GMO is. Nobody raises their hand. And that tells me that parents are not talking to their kids about what they're eating. You know what I mean? And I'm finding that as a big problem in our lectures that, you know, we do. It's like, you know, make an attempt to, and it can be expensive, you know, do the organic option. Know that food was made with no chemical. You know, non-GMO. That plant was not altered. When you go to put your seeds in your garden, get the non-GMO packets. I saw, what was that? Oh, of course, it's gone. Oh, forget it. It's the story of my life. So, and then, you know, I've also, a lot of kids, they think that there's only one type of honey, too. And I always find this interesting, which, I mean, you know, it's like when you're around something so much, it's just like a given that you think everybody knows it. But, you know, there's all different kinds of honeys. There's buckwheat, there's clover, there's orange blossom, there's tupelo, there's eucalyptus, mimosa, like all sorts of different kinds of honey, hundreds. If there's a certain tree, if you're a beekeeper and the bees bring that nectar back for a certain amount of time, if you can get that honey out before they bring something else in, you'll have a pure honey from that tree. You can have, you know, black raspberry or honey locust, or not honey locust. My dad's going to be like, Erin, black locust, which, Dad, that honey was killer. It was so clear and amazing, you know, in all different colors. Some people like lighter honeys. Some people like, you know, the darker, thicker things.
Yeah, my girlfriend Erica, she's like really into honey. She buys it like by like the gallon, and then she had the stuff I got from you, and she used like the stuff that you had that for like some things, but for like something else she used the other kind of honey. Like it depended what she was putting it on. And to me, I guess I didn't know there was much of a difference, but she was like, that one was like, I could be wrong, but like more sweet, and then this other kind was a little more like earthy or something.
Yeah.
So like, how does that happen? I mean, I know you were just saying the different plants, but like what?
Different trees, different locations. I could only imagine like the funky honeys in Africa, you know, or, you know, just kind of stuff like that. Like buckwheat, that real dark one over there, you can use it instead of molasses.
Yeah, this honey that she's pointing at, it's black.
It looks like molasses.
Yeah. And so that's from, what'd you say that's from? That
was from Ohio. Okay. And then I've got another honey from Kentucky that we got at the Clarkson Honey Fest, which that place is crazy. And all the Kentucky honey was red from tulip or poplar trees, and like all of it. So like when we went down there, all the Kentuckians were like, wow, Indiana honey, look, it's so white. So they're like, where we're like, cool.
Exotic.
Yeah, look at all the red Kentucky honey, and we'd go that way.
Yeah, it's really cool how it all works, and how it just makes, like you started the show out with, if there's no bees, there's no us. And then there's like, all these different products on the table, like soap you made, and these different combs. And this stuff, I know you can't like see on the radio, but it looks like Hive stuff. And this is what they used.
Yep.
This is what they used to like mend their holes and stuff.
The propolis.
Propolis. So you wouldn't eat this. You would use it.
You can. Some people do. Because it's got like all different weird stuff in it. Like pine resins and, I don't know. I need to start researching more of what all is in there. But they don't even know what's all in there. Over 300 different things. Surely it's got to be kind of good for you, right?
Something in there has to be just perfect.
It's made out of rocks and sticks.
So, I mean, it looks like, just to kind of describe it to the listeners, it looks kind of like it just pulled off the comb.
Yeah. It looks like dirty beeswax, kind of, but it's shaped like the comb cells, and yeah.
So if you're going to eat, you would just like pop one of those in your mouth and chew it up, or you'd mix it with something? Or...
Yeah. People are crazy with what they eat. They just grind it up and chew on it, or, whatever. Whatever you like.
Yeah, so, like, since your dad has been in it, you said since the 70s, right?
Yeah.
So, like, has he, like, noted any, like, differences? Like, are things getting better or worse?
Well, the crazy thing is we hear about people losing hives. Dad... He takes such good care of his bees and takes such care. I mean, my mom and I always joke that we're going to find him, like, rubbing the belly of, like, one of the bees. Like, he just medicates them. He feeds them. He watches them. I mean, I've seen him just squat down and watch those bees for at least, like, an hour and a half, just watching them come and go. And, I think if you're in tune and you take good care and you're patient and you're not eager enough to open the boxes up and dig through your hives when it's not warm enough. A lot of beekeepers will be like 50-some degrees. That's warm enough. They're flying. Let's go pop the hive open. Well, no, it's still a little chilly. It should be warm when you check through your hives. It's just a lot of patience and a lot of watching and a lot of maintenance. And, the medications, they're expensive. It's not cheap. It's time consuming. And he has a calendar where you have to be really careful, because when they start bringing in honey, all that stuff has got to be cleared. It can't be in the hive. So, he hasn't seen any drop in his bees, but he takes extremely good care of them. The one thing that's really hard on the bees is that nasty negative temperature, or if it's rainy, like last year, it rained and rained and rained. Bees can't go out and work in the rain. They even after it stops raining, they might be able to do some stuff around the hive, but they can't go out and collect nectar or pollen because it's all watered down. They have to wait for all that to dry. So when you see it raining, and it's warm during the spring, we want some of that rain, but it's also got to go, because those bees have to go and collect. So last year, the honey, they could have brought in so much more than what they did. But the bees were behind about 3 weeks to a month last year just because of all the rain, so it's like little things like that people don't really ever know about. It's, you get 2 to 3 weeks of nonstop rain, you're going to have some bees that are getting really down on their supply. And they need at least like 60, well, we like to leave at least 60 pounds of honey in their hive to survive a winter. So then if it's constantly bad, in the winter going into the spring, if they can't get out, go to the bathroom and clean, disease can, it's just like having a bunch of people in an apartment complex, all blocked in there over a period of time. So
how much, you just said 60 pounds, and how much can you get out of a hive in season or however you do it?
I always ask this to my dad, and I should write it down. He's told me about 10 times, and he's probably shaking his head right now. I know, like, okay, you got a frame like this. If you take off, say 3, chunks of comb honey, there's 3 pounds, but you might have like 8 to 10 frames just in one super. So, I mean, it adds up real quick. It gets pretty heavy. And that's like the one thing that scares me about learning all this, is because I'm not the biggest person in the world, and that stuff gets heavy. So it's like if you ever have to move like a whole hive, oh, Paul. That's my husband, by the way.
How many hives does your dad have?
He's got them all spread out. He's, past 50 for sure. But they're at different locations, this and that. Yeah, so he's gone and set them up for friends that want bees on the property, and they've taken nice residence up at places all over central Indiana, for sure. But I'll tell you some fun little bee facts before we're all done. Let's see, 16 ounces of honey requires 1,152 bees to travel 112,000 miles and visit 4.5 million flowers.
That's crazy.
That's just for one 16-ounce bottle. That would be a honey bear. That'd be smaller than that amount right there.
Yeah.
Bees need 60 pounds. That's right. Look at those notes. My dad leaves about 100 pounds on for them to survive the winter. Bees can detect pheromones from humans when scared, so breathe and be calm. And if things get out of control, put everything back together and slowly back away. Go get some lunch and gather your thoughts.
Yeah, that's interesting, because like just right before I was pulling up to your place, that part of the Jungle Book where it says approach the beehive and say sweet things or and approach it sweetly, and it's like, well, it's kind of interesting that you kind of say that.
Yeah. And sometimes
also
working on them too, they get loud. So like when you're in there, you go, I mean, just the sound. I mean, they're not doing anything scary, but it can sound definitely scary.
Yeah.
They can flap their wings 11,000 times per minute.
Wow.
Queens lay 2,000 to 3,000 eggs per day. Honeybees usually fly 1.5 miles for nectar or honey. But they can also travel up to 7 miles at 15 miles per hour. They're fast little guys.
Yeah, that is pretty fast for something that small, I think.
Humans have gathered honey for over 8,000 years, and they have found it in the pyramids.
Yeah.
Sage honey is one of the only honeys, I believe sage and tupelo, if I'm not mistaken, will not crystallize. So it will always stay in its liquid state. I don't know how liquidy. And if you do have crystallized honey or see it for sale, it's not bad. Honey never rots. It never goes bad. You can give it a warm water bath to bring it back to life. So it's like one of those good foods that, if you ever are one of those people that need like ration supplies, your 50-pound bag of rice for the end of the world, you should probably throw a jar of honey in there because it'll never go bad. And it's a really good, what's the word I'm talking about? Instead of using sugar, you can replace it, a replacement.
It's a sweetener.
Yep, use honey in it. And bee communication, they do a waggle dance that is food source direction related to the sun. The angle that they use can tell the direction, so if they turn at an angle, they can communicate where the sun is. And then they can also do their dance during flight too. That'd be kind of cool to dance like while you're flying.
Yeah, that is...
It's odd thought.
Yeah, that's really wild. So, is there anything else you wanted to finish up with? Like, if people want some of your... Like, what all honey products do you have? How can people get a hold of you to get them?
You can contact me at artsywig@gmail.com. It's artsywig. You're more than welcome to send me an email. Also, if you would ever find a swarm and you don't know what to do, you can contact me. And if I can't help you or my father, I have some good friends that I wouldn't hesitate to pass your number along to them. They're nice, respectful beekeepers that do lots of good. So, yeah, support your local beekeeper. Reduce your carbon footprint. The good old-fashioned reuse, recycle, reduce. Keep your water clean. Put on, if you're going to treat your lawn, do it before the dandelions start popping up or do it after. Don't do it during the flower, because that's one of the problems. Watch those chemicals, people. They don't just go away. They wash away and go somewhere else.
Yeah, that is weird. People not liking dandelions and stuff. I don't understand. People can eat those too. And...
You can eat the flower. You can eat the greens, and I'll share with you a private recipe. You do a pancake batter without the liquid, just the dry stuff. So your baking powder, your salt, your flour, and whatever, your sugar. You take big fat dandelion flour, but you got to make sure that you don't get them from people who treat their lawn, because that chemical can stay dormant in the grass and the ground. So get them from a safe lawn. Then you take the flour, don't wash them, but look through them, make sure they don't have any like ants, like the little tiny ants. Because if you wash them, they'll close up. So you want them to stay open. So just kind of like a mushroom. You pick it and you just kind of carefully clean it, like with a towel or whatever. You dip it in egg and dip it in that dry pancake mix and fry it in olive oil. I eat them with honey. I salt and pepper them after you take them out. They're freaking delicious. Paul says, whatever, you can fry anything, it tastes good. I personally love them. They're like little pollen bombs. He eats them with ketchup. That makes me cringe, but whatever. I eat them with honey, and it's a killer snack. And the bigger ones, the better. So, enjoy that, people.
Yeah. Very cool. Thanks for being on. It's really cool to learn about this stuff. This show, I wanted to cover a lot of different topics involving like higher consciousness and like what does conscious even mean. Like being conscious of like the bees, what are they doing, what kind is it, and what is actually happening, and understanding that like you said from at the beginning, like without them there's no us. So
it's all connected. It's the beginning of the ecosystem, and when you start to see them fail, we've got major problems, and this is a reality. This is a warning sign, and it's not to be taken lightly. Like, we all know the condition of the world. You know, you see the oceans dying, things are going extinct. It gets scary as a parent with 2 small children. What kind of legacy are we going to leave? You know, here, kids, have fun cleaning it up. If you make it that long, you know, those fears we shouldn't have to live with, you know. And I would say, too, if anybody has a school group, brownies, Boy Scouts, I have done church groups, anybody who wants to look at specimens or learn about honeybees, you're more than welcome to contact me. So, thank you, Ryan.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for being on. That was really cool. And if you want to get a hold of me about the show or strength and conditioning training online or in person, you can do so at fitnessandconsciousness@gmail.com. Cool show.
We done?
And